You know, we're getting to that point in every video game home console generation where the current generation starts to slow down and everyone starts to look to the future. I know this because every time I log into YouTube or any other gaming media related site, I keep seeing PlayStation 5 this, PlayStation 5 that, next generation console this, next generation console that. And so since I keep seeing it, figured I might as well talk about it. So here are 5 expected features I expect to see in the next generation of PlayStation. Starting off at number 5 is cross-platform play. Now for many of you, this is a no-duh reaction. But let's keep it real. Sony Interactive Entertainment was very, very slow when it came to embracing cross-platform play with other consoles. They've always embraced it with mobile platforms and PC, but when it came to their competitors in the home console space, they were slow to adapt. And this cannot be the case for the next generation. PlayStation 5 needs to have cross-platform play baked in at an OS and network level day one at launch, just so they can avoid the bad PR and any further headaches with it in the future. Number 4 is baked-in VR functionality. Now for a lot of people, you might be wondering, why would you want baked-in VR functionality into a home console? Isn't that going to cost more money? And yeah, it will. But the added hardware that a PlayStation VR 2 would require, if it's baked in into the PS5 at a hardware level, would minimize those of us who buy its headaches when it comes to having 30 different cables plugged into our PlayStations, to the VR headsets, to the walls, the TVs, etc. But that added hardware that's there doesn't necessarily have to just be used for VR headsets. If a person is using the PlayStation VR 2, let's call it, the hardware in there can be used for that purpose, but if it's not being used, game developers should be given the option to utilize that added hardware to make their games look prettier, or 4K, or whatever the next generation standard is, look better than it would if it wasn't there. The current generation PSVR headset, although it's fine and I do enjoy playing on it, it has all the classic signs that it is a first generation iteration of new technology. There are more cables than I care to see in any home console coming off this thing, but it's a good experience. It's not bad, and I want to see it grow, and I think there isn't a better way to make it happen than to bake in VR functionality at launch day from PlayStation 5. That way the next generation of PSVR 2 is much more seamless and just as easy with plug and play as it is with normal home consoles. Number 3 is larger hard disk drive space. When PS4 launched back in 2013, 500 gigabytes was the standard. Fast forward up to today, and we're barely at 1 terabyte standards. Now, do not get me wrong, a terabyte isn't too shabby, but even my PS4 Pro 500 million edition, which came with 2 terabytes, isn't really that much. Red Dead Redemption 2 is an example of what's to come in the future. That game required 2 separate Blu-rays, a game install, and a game data disc, and the install size was 100 gigabytes for that game alone. Next generation games are going to be bigger, prettier, more interactive with more things going on, and all of that's going to require more space for that information to reside on. And even though I'd like to think that Sony's going to try to start with a 2 terabyte drive on the PS5, even that is probably not enough. I probably have about 24 games across PS4 and PSVR, and I'm already about 3/4 of the way full on my 2 terabyte hard disk drive. It's pretty insane how quickly that thing fills up, if I'm honest with you. So we're gonna need larger drives in the next generation because I don't know about you, but I don't want to deal with having to upgrade it, even though it's easy, and I don't like having external hard disk drives hanging off my consoles that look like tumors. So let's try to keep it all contained on the inside with just larger hard drives from the get-go. Number 2 is greater accessibility and more ways to play. Now let's keep it real. Sony's home console business has been their bread and butter for gaming for a long time. They have tried portables in the past, to some success with PSP, to abysmal failure with PS Vita, and so VR and home console seems to be where Sony's going to be sticking around. But Sony needs to find ways to bring their PlayStation experience beyond the television set, and I think they can do this in 2 ways. Sony has experimented with remote play on PS4 with their XPERIA smartphones and the PlayStation Vita system, but these are once again indicators of first generation technologies. The XPERIA remote play experience is tethered to your local home network only, whereas the PS Vita experience is tethered to any Wi-Fi network in the world so long as both devices are connected. The problem with Vita is that it lacks the full set of shoulder buttons and clickable analog sticks that the DualShock 4 has, so it makes playing certain PS4 games a little tricky without some additional accessories. Sony needs to find a way to bring the PlayStation experience onto their XPERIA smartphones so that players can play them wherever they are in the world, or they need to develop a specific device for this purpose, something sort of like a Vita but with a full set of buttons, and its only purpose is to play PlayStation games anywhere in the world with an internet connection. This can be done either through direct remote play with the help of a PS5 system or through the connection of the PlayStation Now application, because Sony seems to be pushing that harder with this generation. So at the end of the day, I really don't care what they do, so long as there's an option for me to play PlayStation 5 games on the go through streaming, through my phone, or to a dedicated portable system for that specific purpose, it doesn't matter. I just believe there needs to be more ways to play PlayStation 5 games rather than the traditional way of being tethered to a TV in the same way PlayStation players have for the past 25 years. And finally, we have number one, and this is probably going to be the most requested and probably the one you guys will agree with me the most, and that is backwards compatibility. PlayStation 4 was the strikes back for Sony Interactive Entertainment. The PlayStation 1 sold over 100 million units, the PlayStation 2 sold over 155 million units, the PlayStation 3 with its disastrous launch only ended up selling 85 million units by comparison in over 10 years of business on the market. To put that into perspective, PS4 has been out for approximately 6 years and has already sold over 91 million units around the world. That's a lot of PS4 systems in such a short amount of time, especially when you compare it to PS3. When Sony launches PlayStation 5, there won't be an easier way for them to bring all those PS4 users into the next generation than by making PlayStation 5 fully backwards compatible at a hardware level day one. Since Sony went with AMD's x86 architecture for the PlayStation 4 and PS4 Pro system, it has been rumored that they are going to be using the same architecture with next generation AMD Ryzen technology to power PS5. And if that is the case, there should be no reason as to why PS5 can't be fully backwards compatible with all PS4 games come launch day. That way, if someone owns a PS5 and they experience sort of a drought in between games, because let's face it, every launch starts off slow, they can always go back to their backlog of PS4 games that at this point already has a well-established catalog of great games waiting. So, with all of that being said, what are your thoughts on my 5 expectations for the next generation of PlayStation? Do you agree with them, or are there some other features you're expecting that I didn't mention at all? Let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section, and as always, I will see you in the next video. And until then, take care.